Welcome everyone. My name is Marka. I'm an AWS account manager based out of Sydney. Today, I've got the privilege of being joined by Caleb and Greg from Cash Invest, and also Shannon from DNX, our premier consulting partner. Gentlemen, I'd like to get you guys to quickly maybe introduce yourselves for our audience at home. So Caleb, over to you.
Sure. So I'm Caleb Gibbins, the CEO and founder of Cash Invest. We started 3.5 years ago providing investment infrastructure for digital investment apps and websites.
Shannon?
Yeah, Shannon Zorn. Of course, I work for DNX Solutions as their security practice lead. DNX has been around for about 4.5 years, started by Helder and Alan, our founders. And yeah, we're a premier partner. We provide a lot of solutions, data migration, modernization, security solutions, and of course managed services, which is our bread and butter right now. So,
awesome. Greg?
I'm Greg Steiniger. I'm the CTO of Cash Investment Management, and I've been with the company for about a year.
Firstly, gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. The purpose of really sort of getting you guys to join us today is to talk through, obviously, first and foremost, Cash's journey with AWS, but also sort of the impact that DNX has had on the journey and the engagement to date as well. So, but before we get into that, Caleb, I might get you to sort of take our audience through Cash and sort of the journey to date. We always love a good origin story, so I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Sure thing. So Cash started 3.5 years ago. Originally, we came to market with a different proposition to what we have today. We started as a B2C investing app. And we had this idea that real-time liquidity in an investing app would change the world. So you could have your money invested, but also have access to it through a debit card at the same time. And so we launched that product just prior to COVID. And we thought this was going to change the world. But when COVID came to town, it suddenly became very difficult to convince people to put their money into investments. I think uncertainty came to town. Everybody thought cash is king. There was uncertainty about employment, uncertainty about the economy. And so it was a very difficult time for us. Around that time, I was also friends with some other Fintech founders who were wanting to launch investment apps of their own. And at the time, they were asking me, how did you do it? How did you put the infrastructure together? How did you get the licensing, the payments, the investment architecture? How do you get the compliance right? How do you get the governance right? And all of that piece we had already built for Cash. And so obviously the opportunity arose for us to say, look, our B2C investment product has got to a certain level of maturity, but the bigger opportunity here is not just to run our own brand, but to launch multiple investment products for partner clients. And that's exactly what we did. So in 2020, we pivoted to launch investing products for our clients. And originally, it was effectively a white label version of what we had already built. But then over time, we've added more and more clients to meet different customer needs, starting with startups and then scale-ups who are adding investments to an existing financial services offering. And then more recently, we've entered investment rewards, and we've also started picking up larger, more established investment businesses, fund managers, who are looking to digitize their investment offering and really engage with their investors in a new way. Fundamentally, seeking the same features and architecture that we had developed for a fintech market and taking that to an old school industry. And that brings us to where we are today, which is, as we say, a digital investment infrastructure powering investment apps and websites across a range of different customer bases.
That's awesome. What you've just shared there, encapsulates a lot of sort of, early stage startups in terms of some of the pivots they've need to make as well. So, again, not too dissimilar to a lot of the other startups as well. But I'm a bit curious, Greg. I've been working with you, for quite some time now, and I'd love for you to maybe take us through some of the challenges from a technology standpoint that you sort of saw when Cash was obviously, going through sort of the COVID period and to now.
Yeah, thank you. So I think one of the things, technology is a great tool and it can enable a lot of, future state things and opportunities. But it's also, one of the things that people often overlook is it's also a risk management tool. And it's really one of those things that, we can actually build great tools like what Caleb suggested the original ideas were. But if those aren't partnered again with just the ability to manage process and also manage, throughput and monitor what's happening, it can be risky. You can build a great thing, but also put your customers at risk, right? So when I joined Cash a year ago, I really looked at some things like the mindset and the design was there, and it was great, and it really worked well. We just wanted to shore it up a little bit better and say, how can we make sure that our priority is our customers' data, our customers' PII information, personal and identifiable information, and how can we actually make sure that we can work with our partners to build confidence and work together to say, yeah, your customers matter to us as much as you as a customer matter to us as well.
Yeah, across the fintech industry, as we all know it, it's a very heavily regulated space. Security, data is obviously at the forefront of everything we do as well. And again, it sounds like you guys are obviously capturing a lot of that in terms of the culture you're building within the organization and where you're looking to take the business. Shannon, I might I want to ask you about more around sort of how DNX got sort of involved in sort of the whole engagement and sort of what role did DNX play?
Yeah. Well, I think, when Caleb and Greg here, they conducted that gap analysis and they saw kind of their gaps and maybe the framework or the security products or resources they were utilizing in the AWS environment, they brought DNX in to help fill those gaps in the end. Instead of having to hire multiple full-time employees to do certain things which could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, it was I think for them, correct me if I'm wrong, it's fiscally responsible to hire someone like us to come in and provide the security products, the licensing, the tools, the personnel, and also our managed services products that we offered. So our job was to prop them up and uplift their posture on top of what they were already doing because they have a security-first mindset with how they're developing their applications and bringing that to market. We kind of fill that gap, and that's what a lot of managed service partners and security partners do for smaller startups. So.
I think if I just add to that, I think the business decision from our perspective was pretty clear. I think we already had a tech team operating our stack in AWS before engaging DNX, and it became clear that we needed to uplift our architecture. And so I think the first thing we engaged DNX with was a well-architected review of our stack. But it became pretty clear that the skills that we needed in order to redesign our architecture and also uplift us from a general infrastructure and security standpoint wasn't in our team. And so at that point, you just ask the question, like, what do we need to do to bring in the resources and the experience to do this? Or do we just rely on the skills we have in the team and hope they can uplift themselves? And so from a risk perspective, from an expertise perspective, it became pretty clear that we needed to engage an outsourced service provider to fill that need. And then since then, we've also been on the managed services, which meets a different need, which is everything from monitoring and review and support across our infrastructure stack. And that's particularly helpful for us and cost effective because we don't have issues like key person risk or corporate knowledge. I think we trust the DNX team will be there. And even if someone on the team is on holidays, there'll be somebody else. Whereas if you compare that to an in-house solution, we would probably have to hire one person who has coverage of that. And we're relying on that one person's expertise, which may be limited. And also we have key person risk in the company if they become unavailable for a shorter or longer period of time. So for a range of reasons, I think an outsourced solution was the clear winner for us.
Yeah, no, that's key as well. Obviously, within sort of any startup, one of the biggest costs is labor cost as well, and be able to sort of lean upon sort of expertise from our premier partners within the space helps provide sort of that confidence as well. I guess Shannon, tell us a bit more around sort of how you guys identified the proper solution and sort of what was the support that DNX provided to Cash to help them grow.
Like Caleb said, the well-architected review was a big part of it, looking at the overall infrastructure, the frameworks that we wanted to stick with. And also, there's some third-party tools that we use to look at little things like encryption, access controls. So yeah, it was kind of a process. We started off with the well-architected review. We did a security review, which involved vulnerability analysis, CSPM, a SIEM solution, And yeah, it was a lot of automated tools that we had utilized, but from that, it created a kind of a backlog of items that we needed to prioritize and work on for them to uplift that posture. And then once we got them up to a certain level that we felt comfortable with is when they, started the journey with compliance. So.
Amazing. And Greg, I guess with that being said, how has that sort of freed up your time within sort of the organization, and how has that sort of built expertise amongst the team?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think, when you have lots of things to do in a modern startup, right? There's so many things that can happen, and you're always at this question of like, do we have enough? Where are the resources, and what are the priorities, right? So in a lot of ways, where we can actually outsource some of the managed services to DNX, but then also rely on them for some of the just best practice ways of analyzing, reviewing that architecture, the security as well. Like it provides a lot of comfort just because it's scary. I think it's scary to try and do it all by yourself. You don't know where, if you're a month behind in something, you could actually be opening yourself up to attack, right? So it's really great to have a partner. So it helps it easier to sleep makes it easier to sleep at night, just because you can say, look, things are being monitored, not just when I'm awake, but actually throughout the night, throughout the weekend. And again, we have just a very good relationship with DNX. Like our team and their team work together quite well, communicate regularly, and just make sure that we're on the same page. I think that's a good thing. When you build a strong relationship, it's easier to say, hey, I got a question, or this doesn't look right, or hey, we need to raise something to your attention. Let's sit down and work on it together. So it's really good just to have that comfort that, 16 people in our company can't monitor everything all the time, but we can actually get a bunch of support from strong partners like DNX that can help us to do that.
Yeah, no, it's true. So we have teams inside DNX that do the monitoring that are always looking at the infrastructure, the alerts. But I think one thing that Cash Invest has done well is integrating us into their teams, making us a part of their weekly sync meetings, and vice versa. We brought them into some of the projects we were working on, maybe security-wise, regarding encryption, maybe changes to the environment. So it's teams within teams, and like Greg said, we've got multiple teams keeping an eye on their environment too. So it's a good reason, I guess, to have us around, and it's good to have them around because we learn from them at the same time, especially when we're working with their application. So.
It's amazing to hear sort of the collaboration between the two organisations, and again, partnering together to go above and beyond is, really, great to hear as well. And Caleb, I guess, what does this mean for Cash into the future, mate?
What does DNX mean, or what is our future roadmap look like?
What's your future roadmap look like now? You've got, a really clear roadmap. You've got the partners in place, compliance-wise. You're there. So. What does that look like?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the roadmap for us is definitely just maturing as an organisation. Over the last couple of years, we have definitely kind of grown up from a startup and scale-up service provider to smaller companies to now becoming a service provider to larger financial institutions. And so a lot of our journey through the last couple of years has been about increasing the robustness of our operations. And that's not only in terms of uptime and monitoring and scalability, but also in terms of security and certifications and compliance and governance. And that extends both into the technology part of our business, but also into other parts of our business. And so this journey has been really preparing us or enabling us to service institutional customers. And I think we've got to a place now where we are comfortably servicing large financial services institutions, and that's enabling us to grow. I think our target customers now have kind of grown. Our target customers are much larger, and we're going after more fund managers and small banks and other financial institutions to enable them to offer digital investment services to their customers in a way they haven't before. So I think all of this is part of our broader strategic plan to say we need an institutional scalable stack that can support the needs of larger institutions in the market.
Fantastic. What an exciting time. Again, all the best and good luck. And I guess just to sort of round up, for the audience and for all of the viewers at home, what advice would you give to either fintechs or other founders that are going through a similar journey that you guys have gone through? What would be some of your top tips or best practices that you can share with the folks at home?
I think from a business perspective, speaking as the founder, not so much the technologists, I definitely say just focus on matters such as risk, compliance, governance, security upfront. It's much easier to build a business, particularly a fintech or a financial services business, with those elements in mind. It's much harder to retrofit a good governance framework around an existing business or security processes around an existing business. And I know that can sound scary. You don't want to overcook, your structure or process too early. But at the same time, it's important to make sure that the level of maturity of your business is appropriate for your scale and for that next step. I don't think we could have scaled like we have if we were doing catch up in all of those areas. And just by way of example, on the InfoSec side, there's ISO certification. We're going for GS007 as our SOC audit standard. On the compliance side, we have a full risk and compliance committee, which is consistently being improved. From the governance side, we have an independent board, which we've been investing in over time. And so all of these elements, I think, need to be appropriate for the size of business that you are. And my advice would be don't neglect that, because particularly if you're a B2B going after larger, more established customers, because, it's an enabler of growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Shannon, would you have any advice?
Yeah, so he kind of actually stole what I was actually going to say, but so my idea was, it's a security first mindset. You should, when you build that application or you have a bright idea for something you may want to bring to the market, security should come first and foremost when you're doing that. The other thing that I see with a lot of startups is they're hesitant to invest in security at the beginning, maybe due to financial stress at the time, but in the end, it'll pay dividends in the long run if you start selling, you bring that application to market, because you may have less issues down the road, let's say data breaches or anything like that, because that could be way more expensive than even bringing the application to market. But yeah, have a security first mindset when you grow, and that's the same thing with DNX. We have a security first mindset with everything, every process we have. I know a lot of the DevOps processes or the CI/CD, you may not have a security guy in the first couple steps, but we put a security person in every step of that process. And just have a security first mindset, and don't be afraid to invest in security. So, yeah.
Thanks for that. And Greg, last but not least.
Yeah, so I just want to add, I think, we have amazing partners. Working with AWS is great. Working with DNX is wonderful. You can see that we collaborate well. And I think what Caleb and Shannon both said are really important pieces of that puzzle. I think one of the things just to always think about is the people and the change. People change because there's, you can put processes in place, you can put policies and all sorts of automated infrastructure in place, but you still need to get people on board, right? There's still things like they need to have secure passwords, right? They need to, be careful about what they do with their laptops and mobile phones when they're out of the office, right? So there are things where you can focus on the technology and all of the tools, but the most important one in any startup is actually scale up is the people. And so you need to make sure that they're on board with that as well. And that you spend time on it, and that's probably going to take longer than anything else.
If I just add to that people element, I think in our experience, and I think it's similar for a lot of companies that are scaling fast, all the processes that you build for one scale of businesses break when you double in size. And so if I think back to when we were like 4 people and 8 people and 12 people, and now we're like 16 people, all the processes break. And those processes could be user access processes. It could be, your weekly meeting processes. It could be, who do you report to? It could, all your processes in the businesses change. That all hands meeting you have with 5 staff functions very differently from the all hands you have with 16 staff. And I imagine it'll be different again at 30 and above. And so if you're growing, and if your headcount is growing and your company is growing, then all your processes are under constant review, and you're constantly saying this thing that we put in place 18 months ago is no longer fit for purpose. We need to change that. And that has impact across the business. Forcing people to change what they're doing all the time is hard. And you've got to manage that just as part of growth in a startup.
Yeah, that's really good advice. If I were to sort of, summarize that, people, process, security mindset, and investing early. So, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for spending the time with us to talk through the Cash and DNX and AWS journey to date. Just want to say a heartfelt thank you to Caleb, Shannon, and Greg for being here today, and thank you for all the advice that you've given to our viewers at home as well.
No worries.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.